The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. So thrilled to be back from my travels and my time off, and I hope you guys joined us yesterday with our first show back with Dr. Doreen Granby-Schaefer, Ask Dr. Doreen. But we're back. We're back. I'm back and thrilled to be back. Let me tell you, we've got a lot that we want to accomplish before we get to the end of 2024. And we're looking at this schedule for the next 4 months. Woo, it's a lot, my friends. We're already hard at work on the toy guide and going to be actually picking winners here in a couple of weeks. And can't wait to show you guys all the amazing toys that are out there and available this year that can help lift any child, but most especially we're looking at being able to lift the hearts and minds and ignite the hearts and minds of individuals on the spectrum, whether they're very young babies up through senior citizens. And we even include a caregiver category to help support those who are supporting the ones that we love. So I hope you can check out last year's toy guide right now. I think we have a launch date of, it's somewhere in November. We'll tell you more later. But very, very excited about that. Lots going on. Of course, we're hard at work on the All Ghouls Gala, which is the big fundraiser that we do to support Autism Care Today. That's the weekend before Halloween. Tickets, I think, are going on sale tomorrow, and tickets will sell out for that. So hope that you guys will, if you're in LA, we hope that you'll come because it is wild fun, let me tell you. Wild star-studded fun while you're raising money for autism. If you're not in the Los Angeles area, we hope that you will help promote it by either buying a ticket for a family that's here. And when I say family, let me say this is an adult event. This is not for little kiddos at all. This is an adult event, an adult Halloween party, because we don't have enough of those in the world. We have little kid Halloween parties, and there should be adult. Halloween is fun for adults. This is a costume event for adults to raise money for autism. So if you aren't able to join and you can afford to buy a ticket for somebody who can't afford locally to attend, please do that or help promote it on your social media. We'll be talking with you more about that. So who am I? I'm Shannon Penrod, and I am a proud pony. I am a parent of a neurodiverse individual. Those are the words that my son has given me to describe what my relationship is to autism. I know that makes some people I get mail where people tell me you're saying it wrong, it's neurodivergent. And let me assure you that for my son, it isn't. And I appreciate where you're coming from because that tells me what words you would like. But let's remember that everybody uses different words, and these are the words that are coming from my son. And he considers them not incorrect. So we could talk about that or have him on to talk about that at another time. But today we have lots of other fish to fry. We are live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and about a dozen other sites. And our fabulous Chris Desmond is going to start to show you on the screen some of the different ways that you can connect with us and watch the show, whether it be live or in podcast format. We welcome so many of you, so many of our audience, a much bigger portion of our audience listens in podcasts later on. And you are literally listening, not watching. So when I say they're on the screen right now, I'm sure sometimes that is a little bit annoying. But I do want to encourage you, if you're listening in podcasts, that every once in a while, head over to our YouTube channel, and then you can see what kind of bad hair day I'm having. You can get to see our amazing guests and some of the amazing graphics that Chris Desmond spends so much time working on because he is a bit of a genius. Good morning to Autism Journey with Elijah. Oh, I'm so excited that you're here because we've got an amazing guest today. That I think is going to just your mind. So speaking of that, I do want to just say, though, that the chat is open, just like Autism Journey with Elijah. You can be writing in right now. It's our favorite part of the day when we get to interact with you guys. And I know my guest today. Those of you, if you're watching live, you may have questions. We hope that you'll write them in because she's pretty amazing. So we are going to get to her in just a few minutes. Sylvia Moore Myers is going to be joining us. She is, like I thought I knew who I was interviewing, and then I got to talk with her, and she's ever so much more than even that. She has come to us today to talk specifically about when you are a person who does not get diagnosed and what the repercussions of that are. And she's talking about that from a firsthand perspective as a self-advocate. We'll let her talk to us about that. But she is ever so much more than that. And I'm so excited because she is also someone who is experienced in and a specialist in grief, loss, and trauma. So that's a whole other thing that I didn't know that we were going to be talking about today, but we are going to be talking about that. I said to her, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to be sending a lot of people to you. Hi, Nicholas. I'm so thrilled that you're here. Especially lately, it's like we go in streaks, but I've been having a lot of people reach out to me and say, who do you recommend when there is grief, loss, or trauma, and there's a member of the family that's on the spectrum, and how do we begin to hope to support them through this, right? I think it's a very important topic, and I can't wait to talk with Sylvia about that as well as her journey. Rosie, so happy to see you with both your colored hearts. So thrilled that you're with us. Okay, so before we get to Sylvia Moore Myers, let's take a second and do the jargon of the day. So many of you, I think pretty much everybody is back to school. There might be a couple of colleges that it's still a week or two away. But most of the rest of us are back to school. And I am hearing horror stories. Now, I do want to tease that on Monday, we're going to be having a wonderful special education attorney who is also a self-advocate who's going to be here with us on Monday. And I can't wait to talk with him because there is some shenanigans going on at schools this year. And in a lot of different areas of the IEP where there's shenanigans going on. But a lot of it comes back to today's term, which is why I wanted to talk about it today. Our jargon of the day is LRE. LRE. So what that stands for is least restrictive environment. Let's go ahead and let's look at what our actual definition for this is. Because this is important. Least restrictive environment is a principle that guides the education of students with disabilities who receive special education services. It aims to provide students with support while limiting their participation in general education as little as possible. The goal is to help students succeed while still keeping them engaged with their peers. Now, that definition came to us from Google AI. I've started throwing those in from time to time. Yes, I'm a convert. Sometimes they have really good definitions. And I love this because I want us as people who are supporting individuals on the spectrum to understand that least restrictive environment is there to ensure that the child or teen or adult is not taken away from the general population any more than is absolutely necessary. That we do not live in 1963 and we are not taking people and isolating them and going, oh, it's best for everyone. Now, I know that this is the letter of the law, but it is not often the letter of how things go at schools. So it is important that we talk about this. Now let's move on to our more working definition. Just another way of looking in this, and it's from understood.org. Least restrictive environment means kids who get special education should be in the same classrooms as other kids as much as possible. Now that's the fruit of this. That is as concise as I could find it anywhere where we're supposed to be. But here's what I want to say to all of you that are parents who are overwhelmed and are like, but I don't understand, and what does that mean? And how is this of any help to me? And I get so befuddled and confused when I'm in that IEP meeting. So here's a little bit of homework for you that might help and have a payoff. You have your IEP, right? I hope you know where it is. I want you to find it. Whatever the standing IEP is for your child right now, I want you to find it. I want to encourage you to get a sheet protector that has magnets on the back of it. And I want you to put it in the sheet protector, and I want you to put it on the side of your refrigerator. Doesn't have to be, or if people are in your house and you don't want them to be all up in your business, tape it to the inside of a cabinet. The sheet protector, not the IEP, but where you can put the IEP in and take it out. So it's like, in case of emergency, break the glass, you know where it is, right? Because it is the roadmap for your child for this next year, and we're going to be on top of it. This is the year that we're going to be on top of it. So once you know where it is and you've got it in a place where it lives, and it lives there, right? By the way, you can also make copies of it and do that and give it to every person on your child's team, your teacher, so that they don't lose it either, with magnets, so they can put it on a file cabinet or someplace where they know where to find it. But when you know where your IEP is, I want you to pull it out, and there are many pages, and it can be so overwhelming, but I want you to find the page that is the LRE page. It is its own page, and often it is the keys to the kingdom. When there are times when I will say to a parent, if they're having a problem, and I'm not an attorney, I am somebody who considers myself an advocate for individuals on the autism spectrum. And I sometimes, if I have time, I will say to a parent who I'm talking to, if you want to, I'm happy to look at your IEP. And there are two main places, well, three, that I go to see what's going on. I read the first little report about how things, this child is this is the study, this is what's been happening, da 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 da. And usually it has some sort of a recommendation there. Then I look at the placement. What is the placement and what are the services, right? So I look at those two things, and then I turn to the LRE page. Now, here's something that I think a lot of people miss. The LRE page is where the school has to defend their choice for why your child needs to be in a special day classroom or why they can be mainstreamed, whatever. But often it details, because they have to prove it. They have to state, here's what we did legally, and we looked at this and this, and here's why this, da 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 da. But often they give away the keys to the kingdom there, and they will say, this child is not able to do X, Y, Z. They have to have support, which is why we're putting them in the special day class. And that's often where we get them. Because we can then argue that with the right support, if it's support that's missing, then they could be in the general ed classroom. It is one of the strongest pieces that we have to fight for our students, that LRE page. Read it and see what it says, because often there's a contradiction from the first page where it says, this child, they'll say, oh, this child is working, this, everything is wonderful. We get to the LRE page and it doesn't match. And that's where we have an argument to argue for a one-to-one aid. That's where we have an argument to argue, no, they should be in mainstream, or an argument for more support. It tells us a lot that there. I love all the questions that are coming in. Lucy says, hi, Shannon, are you attending the TACA conference? I am. I think, but I'm not sure, that I might be doing something at it. I don't want to give anything away. But yes, I will be there. I hope to see you there. That's coming up in October, too. There's a lot going on. And that's a fun conference. If you're in Southern California, I really just want to say to you, do yourself a favor. If you are a regional center client, they will pay your admission fee into the conference. It's a 3-day conference. I think it's $75, which is, too much for a lot of people. Regional Center will pay for it. I just want you to know that Regional Center will pay for you to go to one conference every year. TACA often says to people, there are other conferences that are so much more expensive. Don't waste it on the TACA conference. You can also apply for a scholarship if you need to from TACA. So either way, I want to encourage you that, $75 is a lot of money for a lot of people. As conferences go, it's very affordable. Right? But it doesn't matter if you don't have $75 in your couch cushions. But it's 3 days of hope and connection and seeing that you're not the only one. Man, it recharges my battery every year. I will be there. Autism Journey with Elijah says, I cannot wait to see this one. I'd love to know more about this opinion of public school versus homeschool. That's on Monday, I think we're talking about. I also find that even going into online classes with a regular school is that way as well. Even though my son goes online doesn't mean that he needs to be isolated in his education. What we do for school is working out so much better than public school. I'm so proud of you. You are working it, Mama. And then they said, so Shannon, ESA covers his education online through a private school. He does not need an IEP or a 504 plan. Just for some who may not know this. Yes, that's a very interesting, and you and I should talk more about that because I don't know enough about when you are doing that kind of a program about what your specific rights are. Because I believe, and don't quote me, I believe you still have a right to the IEP at the school district, and that they still have a responsibility unless you sign that off. But happy to chat with you too. Happy Wednesday. Lucy, I don't think I can say if I'm presenting at TACA, but there may be some surprises. I will just say that to you. I don't know. So I cannot say, but I will be there and I might be doing something. Let us say that. Okay. So thrilled to hear from absolutely all of you. I want to talk a little bit about our guest today because she's pretty phenomenal. And, there are so many layers to people. And I'm so privileged to get to sit in this chair. And the people that I get to meet along the way are really remarkable. Let me talk a little bit about Sylvia Moore Myers. She's an author, a consultant, a mental health coach, a trainer, and a speaker. And today she's going to be joining us specifically to talk about the dangers of what happens when somebody doesn't get an early diagnosis. And she's going to tell that from a first person perspective, which I can't wait to hear from her about how she identifies in terms of autism, but we know that she is a self-advocate. She has a book that's called Gold Scars. And the book, which is subtitled The Truth About Grief, Loss, and Trauma, and How to Beautifully Mend, is amazing. The SCAR stands for Strength, Courage, Adaptability, and Resilience. Wow. Let's take a breath here because I know the people I'm talking to know more than a little about that. You've all demonstrated strength, courage, adaptability, and resilience. Doesn't that sound like the very definition of somebody who loves somebody on the spectrum? Absolutely. She has a specific method for helping to heal grief that I can't wait to hear about because she has been through some stuff in her life. She's an experienced entrepreneur, as I said, author and business consultant with over 30 years of expertise. She's certified in mental health, life coaching, and crisis intervention. She is the founder and CEO of Gold Scars LLC. She has authored the book Gold Scars, offering insights into grief, loss, and trauma. As a sought-after speaker, she inspires audience to embrace that scar, strength, courage, adaptability, and resilience, and navigate healing through her 7 to Heal method. So excited to have her here to talk specifically about autism, her journey, and what advice she has for all of us. So let me welcome to the show Sylvia Moore Myers. Sylvia, what a treat to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Love your setup there. What an amazing setup you have. There's so much to talk about. I want to start with asking you to tell us how you identify in the autism community and what your relationship is to autism.
Sure. The diagnosis or what I like to be called.
I think I want to start with what you like to be called, and then let's talk diagnosis.
Well, so with my family, when I found out, I told them I wanted to be called Queen of Astifia, whatever, but they wouldn't let me do that. So the thing that I correct folks for me is I'm here with my husband. I have a purse, but I am autistic. And so I don't like being said I'm diagnosed with autism, or I have an autism diagnosis. I like to think of myself as autistic, an autistic person,
Wonderful.
individual. I also like neurodivergent a lot.
Okay. Fantastic. And how did this come about in your life? Because one of the things we're going to talk about is when you don't get diagnosed early. So I'm guessing, and our audience is probably guessing, that your story does not come with an early diagnosis.
Not at all, although it should have. There's no doubt in my mind, and at least one of my siblings, that our mother was autistic. We only knew the term Asperger's. We thought high IQ and Asperger's went hand in hand. That's what we had been told. And so we figured after we lost Mom, she had accomplished so much, but she was not a nurturing person, just the opposite, and she had all the traits, didn't like showers because she didn't like the way water felt touching her head. You name it, we kind of started putting it together that there was a very good chance that the reason our mother was the way that she was all of our childhoods is that she was autistic. So in that respect, I started researching for my book, as you know, and I'll tell you a little of why I wrote the book about grief in just a minute. But as I got to the tail end of the book, I was resolving for my readers, what happened to Mom, because I had led them through a journey of my relationship with her and a lot of tragedies that had happened to me as a child and as an adult. And I was resolving Mom, and I mentioned that she was autistic and that I thought that I might be also, and I would keep my readers posted because I had to go to print. My publisher was ready for this book at that point. He knew that I was putting that in there and I was going to go on and get a diagnosis, which took a long time. But then I was ultimately diagnosed autistic. So that is how I found out. That was about a year ago. When I discovered that, and like most autistic people, I super focused on it immediately and became certified, advanced certified in autism, because that's what you do when you're autistic. That's your super focus. That's what you want to be. But I had become a certified grief specialist, counselor, coach, and I don't know how to resolve it, but I knew there was something wrong with me my whole life. From early childhood, getting bullied and punched in the face for what I could never tell was a reason, to, being beat up in junior high school until I took kind of my own life into my own hands. But after high school, the same thing happened with employers. I was very vulnerable. I could not tell if someone was trying to rape me or ask me for directions. I just really couldn't tell the difference. I couldn't read that person. So it made me very vulnerable. And as a result, I was abused as an adult as well. In 2003, my teenage son pulled into a gas station. He was buying a Snickers bar and a Mountain Dew for his girlfriend. He was going to drop that off to her and then come back home because we were putting the Christmas tree up the next day. He was accosted at gunpoint and shot at close range. And when we got to the hospital that night, that's the call that you never want to get, right? Come now, can't tell you why. When we got to the hospital, he was still breathing, sensitive to the touch, but because of where the brain went in and out of, his head, there was no brain activity. So we left the hospital to pick out a coffin for a child that was warm, knowing that the next time we would see him, he would be in the coffin that we chose the next day. Very tragic. Our whole family was suffering. My two younger children obviously lost their best friend and brother. And 8 months later, I'm on my way home and someone is following me. I thought it was a friend of mine that we were all just together. So I thought, oh, that's so nice. They're following me home, making sure I get in the house okay. No, it was a want-to-be serial killer. I kid you not. And started to beat me up and try to put me in his car in my own driveway. I did get free. I managed to get the license plate number, and I grabbed my son's baseball bat and just started swinging it at him, giving him his license plate number over and over again, and got into the house because I thought, as depressed as I was at that point, as unhappy as I was over the loss of my child, I knew if that man killed me, he was going to walk inside of my house and hurt my other two children. And they were oblivious to him being there. So he did back down the driveway and left. They found him immediately with the license plate number, and he went to prison. I had two lawsuits to go through: the murderer of my son, who went to prison, and then the man that tried to kill me in my own driveway. And I went on to bury a brother that same year, another brother from a heart defect, my sister from brain bifida, I do believe was the final diagnosis, both of my parents. And I was so steeped in grief at that point that I sought out grief recovery. Yeah. And when I learned and started to heal is when I started to write this book. I tried to help people one at a time, and it didn't work. I can't help one person at a time with grief recovery. I can, but the best way to do this and show people how it really works and what the truth really was to write the book. And the book is what brought me to the discovery of autism. And it was just a big circle. So my childhood nickname was Tizzy from birth. My brother couldn't pronounce my name. He called me Tizzy. Everybody thought that was great. My family still calls me Tizzy. So I tell everybody I've just made the circle back around to my tism. I'm Tizzy again. But God has a sense of humor, doesn't he?
What a journey you have been on. And I can't even imagine, no one gets to a certain age without having some grief. And I think most of us have some trauma somewhere, but you had more than your fair share, Sylvia. And
it was true in most, especially with autistic people, the trauma and the loss tends to go into PTSD very easily. And that was true with me. So it was very confusing for me why I was feeling so stuck in it, and that's why I really sought out professional help and some serious, I need steps. I want to, and I designed them basically myself from other things that I'd gone through. And but you're right. There was a lot on me, and I needed out from under it.
Well, and so many, as I mentioned before, so many people have been reaching out to us and saying, what's the path when there's been a loss? And there's so many circumstances that I can think. Most recently, a family reached out to us because mom it was imminent that mom was going to pass away, and there was an adult son. And a friend of the family had reached out and said, I don't know how to explain to him that his mom isn't going to be here anymore. And she said, do you have any help for me? And I said, I gave her a couple of numbers of people that weren't necessarily experts in that. But I said to her, here's the thing. I don't understand it. When somebody in my life passes away, I don't understand it. So, trying to explain it to somebody else, ooh. And people, I find, first of all, people think, oh, well, you can. And that just fascinates me. I'm like, really? You understand it? So teach me.
Our country, our nation, and probably the world, we broke grief about 100 years ago. 100 years ago, if Grandma would have passed away, we would have laid her out in her parlor of her house, and everyone would have come to visit and brought food, and we would have talked about Grandma, and the children would have been there. And we would have modeled grief for our children at a very young age. I went to several funerals as a child. My babysitter had taken her life, and I never really understood why. No one talked to me about it. And I lost my grandmother, who was the nurturer to me, that she was the nurturing person. And I lost her at a very young age. And we were at a funeral parlor, which,
Right.
by the way, that they stole that name from Grandma's house. That's where they got it, but it's not the same.
Interesting.
But the parlor, that's right. So, but we tend to not want to expose our children to grief. And then we get into those situations where they do lose somebody, or even a pet. If that's their first loss, that is still a tragic. If that's their 10th loss, it's still a tragic loss for a child, and for most adults as well. But we've kind of failed that lesson of life, that this is part of life. When we get our dog, his life is maybe 15 years, and someday we're going to say goodbye to him. And I think we fail sometimes by not preparing ourselves way ahead of time that this is a possibility, right? And I think that's part of why the grieving process is so hard. But all grief you can resolve. Most people don't start the grieving process because they really don't know where to start, and they just kind of waller in it because that's where they're getting the most attention, and that's where they stay. And as you know, anything that's negative attention is still attention, but it's still negative. So the first process is to admit that you need some help. Whether you're getting that from a book, from me, or from a professional individual, just getting that help and saying, hey, I'm going to work through this. I need a little help. What can I do to start this process? And then because what do we all do when there's something tragic in your family? We all help the rest of the family, don't we? Especially if we're women, we just tend to be nurturers.
Well, my family eats. That's what we do. Just to be clear.
Lots of food. That's a great tradition. Nothing wrong with that. But I think we forget that it's okay at Grandma's house, right back to that. We talked about Grandma. We may even made fun of stuff that she did. We talked about my Amma when she passed away. That was my husband's grandma. And we were laughing about her at her funeral, quietly, but we were still laughing because we're like, okay, she's up in heaven trying to give everybody her green beans that she never wanted to eat, and so she can eat her pie. And just the cute and funny things. And for some reason, we've kind of made it taboo. It is okay to remember somebody, even in a tragic loss, to remember the things that made you smile about them, because smiling, and the chemical reaction that it causes, the dopamine, the serotonin, all of those chemicals in your brain are healing. Even a fake smile will help you to recover from an illness. So I'm like, fake it till you make it, right? But I think you got to get to that point where you can actually smile again. And to get there, you start with your help. I've got the 7 H's, and I'll give you a website where everybody can get all of that free. And I've got a little PDF that we'll have up in a couple of days for you. But, you get the help first, which starts the healing process. You be healthy on purpose. That's back to the eating, right? Eat right, not the wrong things, just eat. Right. Exercise, even a little bit is better than none. And then hope, having hope. That's the one thing. So I don't hope for anything anymore. He's gone. I've lost all my hope. It's like, no, you have something to be hopeful for. You need to find out what that thing is and talk about it every day. I call holiness my other H, which is worthiness, that we feel so far away from God, like he did this on purpose. And we don't help this at a funeral, do we? Because everybody's like, well, God just wanted Jacob in heaven. Or they say things like, Jacob's work on earth was done. It was God's will. They've got another angel in heaven. And I'm like, what was he working on? And why did he finish so soon? And no, that's not the God that I serve. He doesn't. Right. God didn't wake up on December the 6th, 2003 and go, I need Jacob up here stat. Right. That's not the God we serve. But we do that to ourselves. And that makes us feel like we're unworthy. And we are so worthy. And then happiness, right back to you got to smile about something, find something to be grateful for. If you can't be happy, go make somebody else happy, because the real joy in life is giving out joy. If you've ever opened a door for somebody at the mall or at the grocery store or wherever, you know that feeling. It felt good to do something for somebody else. So if you have nothing else to do, get out of the house, go across town and start opening doors for strangers. It's strange, but those kind of weird things, and just helping other people really does help.
Yeah.
And then the other H is being hilarious, being able to tell funny jokes, being able to laugh out loud and make the people around you laugh with you. Those are healing mechanisms. And all of those affect your life from one point to another. Are you going to go through the 6 stages of grief? Yeah, you are. They're in my book. Boring. Yeah, we all go through them, don't we? Because you have to. It's part of grieving. I can't believe it happened. I'm going to bargain with God. Maybe if I wake up tomorrow, this wasn't real. You're going to go through all of those and depression. But the true healing is a mindset of saying, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to work on help and happy and healthy and trying to find that joy back in my life again. I promise you, once you start finding things to smile about, whether that's you and your child or just yourself first, the healing does begin, and it's magical.
You're so inspirational because I don't, there are very few of us who've been through the kinds of things that you have. So that gives you so much authority to be talking about this. And it is, I mean no disrespect when I say this, I mean this quite genuinely. It also makes you a gift to our community because you have an understanding of this that is perhaps different than other people. You came to the show today. It's just an added bonus that you can talk to us about grief, but you came to the show today to talk with us about the journey of children and early diagnosis. And you mentioned that, you know, you feel very strongly that when you were a child that the signs were there.
They were all there.
And yet you didn't get the diagnosis. Do you have any thoughts about why?
You know, my mother was that, but I imagine she would have never admitted to it, and that probably was part of it. She had an estranged relationship with the girls in our family, but not with the boys. You know, maybe that's the reason. We had a lot of, my mother was in politics. Our family was very political. So anything like that could have been a sign of weakness. I don't know, but I was a walking, talking autistic child. I spoke full sentences after the age of 1, and I was speaking French and English by the age of 2, when most children couldn't carry a full sentence. That's a different end of the brain. I wasn't non-vocal, but I did have moments where I never spoke to anyone.
Right.
When I went into grade school, I approached people like I would approach any of my siblings, and there was a lot of us. And I was just ostracized. One girl in the 2nd grade just punched me square in the face, and I went and hid. It's like, I never spoke. And then she showed up on my ball team when I was in junior high, and she did the same thing to me there. It's like, is she going to follow me around for the rest of my life? Wow. But they were bullies, and I didn't see any of it coming. I would make 1 or 2 friends. They would go, or not stay long, or they'd be friends with somebody else the next day and didn't want to be apart with me. So I was quirky. I guess the name Tizzy probably fit. I was a little, bewildered and quirky. I was in my own little world. I bit my nails until they bled, and when I couldn't bite my hands anymore, I messed with skin on my feet. I pulled my hair. I deformed 2 fingers on my right hand from chewing my nails as a child. I deformed them permanently. I carried my hands together, and I still do, right out front. I would have diagnosed me as autistic by about age 7, probably, or earlier. And nobody did. I excelled in school. That was probably one of the things that probably was a better masking. And I did learn to mask. Yeah. I learned how to very well. And in high school, I knew how to make people like me. I didn't have a lot of close friends, but I had a lot of people that liked me. And so I was very good at like running for an office or field commander with the band. But I was field commander of the band. I tried out for it, and I told the guy I had to be that because I couldn't keep up with the rest of the marching band. I just couldn't. They'd go one direction, I'd head the other. At least as the field commander, I got to march to my own little tune in my head. And that same thing with cheerleading. I would have never gotten a chance to cheer, except for the wrestling team was looking for girls that wanted to dress up as cheerleaders. And if you could shake little things, then you could be one. No talent required. I got to be a cheerleader. It was so exciting because I could never learn to cheer. I mean, again, there's so many other things that were involved in abuse. Even as an adult, I was vulnerable, and people could see. Um, vulnerable people stand out. The wolves go after the littlest lamb, right?
Isn't it true?
So when you're undiagnosed, it's that employer that decides that it's okay to sexually harass you to the point of disgustingness, right? You lose jobs because of that. I quit 2 jobs because of sexual, abuse from employers.
That has to have led to some grief and some trauma.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where you've got the grief and the trauma of your mom passing, and so amazing that you're healing and writing this book. What was it like, though, the moment that you went, hey, I'm going to go get professional help for this and I'm going to get the diagnosis?
Yeah.
What was that journey like? Because I hear from so many adults that getting a late diagnosis is just more difficult than anything else on the planet.
Well, for me, when you if you opened a book right now and you read it and it was all about you, you would just be going, oh, that's me. And that was me. And I was going, oh my God, this is me. And I'd read more about autism and late diagnosis, especially girls. And I'd go, oh my gosh, this is me too. And I'd be like, oh, I have that. What's it called? My husband would say, alexithymia. Like, I was still learning terms, but I knew those were all me. And I'm like, this is me, Adam. My oldest son called me and said, Mom, we don't think you're autistic. You might be ADD or ADHD or something, but not autistic. You're too smart. That was his answer. And of course, a year later, he's like, yeah, definitely you're autistic. We've all had a lesson in what it means, but I had to know. I'm sorry, but I'd gone through an entire life and changed my life around to avoid abuse, and to find out that there was a reason for it, and that, I can put, a dot on the I and cross a T and put a period at the end of my sentences for the first time in my life meant a lot to me.
And yet, and I hear this from a lot of adults that get that late diagnosis. There was one gentleman that I always remember, he said, I got to meet myself for the first time.
Yes.
I got to meet and that, I just always remember that phrase that he said. And so there is there is a gift in getting that late diagnosis when you do, but I'm also wondering, is there some grief?
Absolutely. I grieve Tizzy. I grieve for that. And I don't want to cry because I get mad at myself when I cry, but I grieve that little girl that went through all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I can't go back. You can't go back in time and fix it, right? A lot of people ask me this. Do you think your life would have been different if you were diagnosed as a child? And my answer is, hell yeah. You kidding? Yeah, definitely. If I told you how many times I've been through relationships, lost relationships, made bad choices and had nobody as an advisor. I mean, if you're a parent to a young adult autistic person, you don't ask them to move out at 18. I mean, I have a cartoon character strip that I'm working on that'll be out sometime this year called Being Tizzy. And one of them is me at 18, and I'm standing on the other side of my family's door knocking, going, hey, I still need you guys.
Yeah.
Because that's how I feel. I felt like I was thrust out there to be an adult, and in my brain I was still a child, and I still needed guidance, and I didn't have it. My frontal lobe was still developing.
Absolutely. So
and to be autistic and to be on your own, I was on my own at 18. I lost a baby. I got married and found out he was engaged to be married to someone else. I got married on a rebound and was, basically verbally abused for 10 years. Those are things that happened to me because I was autistic.
Yeah.
Not bad luck.
Right.
Right.
Well, and people were taking advantage, which I can't, I'm so sorry. And I have no other words except to say that I'm sorry. I'm glad that as an adult, you're taking care of Tizzy. Because that's what I would want to do, is take care of Tizzy. I'm curious. I want to get to some of your social media because I want to make sure that people know how to get in touch with you. But then I want to talk about maybe some takeaway points for some of the different people who are listening and watching. So first, let's start with your social media. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you, and where can they get your book?
Sure, sure. They can go to sylviamooremyers.com, which is my full name, Sylvia Moore, Moore, Myers.com. You can get the book there. If you put in the code, I have a code for you. Hang on. MJA50, and you buy it on my website it'll say direct from the publisher, and you put that in, you'll get it for half off. So it'd be like $8 or $9 instead of $18, right? So very good price. And then, but that is the main website right now, is Sylvia Moore Myers. Goldscars.com is still going to that same website, but we're actually building another website for Gold Scars, which will be up in about a month. But for now, both of those are safe locations, whichever you want to type in. On social media, let me give you the right one. Hold on, just because I have multiple websites and it's for Sylvia Tizzy.
Well, I see that for Facebook, it's Sylvia Tizzy Myers.
Yes, that's the one. Go to that one, Sylvia Tizzy Myers, and on that website you'll also find a link for me, and I have a link tree, which is Gold Scars. So if you want to find everything about me and you have Linktree, or you know how to get there, just type in Gold Scars. It's Linktree/Gold Scars, and that's me.
Wonderful. Now, to the advice, because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
We know now that diagnosing girls is not where we want it to be, even now.
I don't know.
So for parents that are out there that have young girls that are maybe in the process, and I'm talking young girls first, where they need to go and get the diagnosis, what advice do you have for them to make sure that their girls don't have to go through what you went through?
Absolutely. I think a lot of fear in getting a diagnosis, especially for your daughter, a child maybe that's not non-vocal. You got a very vocal child, but all the other signs are there, is that child's going to be stigmatized or placed in a classroom where they don't belong. And there's all these fears that your child is going to be exactly in classes where they need to be based on how smart they are, where they are in their learning journey on their IEP. And by taking that away, by not getting a diagnosis, you're setting that child up for bullying and abuse. And it is historical that your child is going to be vulnerable. And now you've got a young girl who doesn't know if someone's her friend or not. A lot of young girls, and myself included, have sexual abuse when you're young because of that. So don't fear the diagnosis. Go for it immediately, and then get an advocate. Like myself, I'm like Shannon, to help you if you're having trouble, with the school. Get a professional to help you. We're protected by the Americans with Disability Act of 1990, although you wouldn't know it. And one of my goals is to change that, starting at the top and the bottom, going both directions, with better training for physicians right now. Their own studies show that they're not properly trained. Research I'm doing right now, I'm getting a master's in human services right now, and one of the research studies on autism that I'm doing shows doctors admitting that there's bias. They admit it in these blind studies, and that most of their training and knowledge on autism comes from the media. Yeah, that actors are better trained at the terms of autism than physicians. So that is groundbreaking that they're trying to change this and really get nurse practitioners and your general practitioner, your pediatrician trained in autism awareness, so that they can, maybe not diagnose, but help with that diagnosis and speed it up. Absolutely. We don't have enough certified people out there who can diagnose you. I had to travel 4 states to get a diagnosis, or wait 2 years, right? So yeah, those were my choices.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
In terms of, for the young women that are out there that are already over the age of 18 and making this decision for themselves, maybe you could give them a brief statement of to empower them to do what you did, which is to go get the help you need.
Absolutely. Yeah. First, I have a family member, a young female family member that was recently diagnosed as autistic. And she actually approached me and said, right after, she goes, I don't want to talk about autism with you. And I went, you don't have to. Because for her, she was in the initial shock phase of getting a diagnosis of autism, right? Denial, right? That's the first one. It can't be true, right? And grief. And she was going through those early stages. But don't be afraid of the diagnosis. You're not going to be stigmatized. This is a way that you can learn about yourself. For me, I didn't feel upset. I was elated that I knew what had happened to me my whole life, that I was able to piece it together. I wish someone would have told that to me when I was in my teen years, because I would have been superwoman, as far as I would have known why I was doing the things that I was doing, and I would have empowered myself to do them more. I was a master masker. I knew how to do it. I still do. But it's exhausting. And if you're autistic and you've ever masked for a long period of time, when you're done, you just kind of collapse onto something, right? Just go, oh, where's my toy? Yeah, but it's true. So, but don't be worried about stigma, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
There's 5 million of us in the United States alone, and we're not even done diagnosing people that are kind of lost in there. That's our number right now. That's powerful, that's strong, and that has a very loud voice. And folks like myself are ready to scream it on the mountaintops.
And we need you to. We need you to. But having said all that, and I love that you were elated when you got that diagnosis. One of the things that you and I spoke about before we came on the air is that when there is a diagnosis, whether it is a child getting the diagnosis and the parent is having the feelings, or for someone who is an adult getting a late diagnosis, that there can be some grief. We don't want to stigmatize this at all, but it is normal. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you're moving in one direction and thinking everything is one thing, and then you find out, oh, it's this other thing, even that little bit of change, there is a little bit of letting go of what you thought was that I think creates some grief.
Right. And grief basically is the change of something occurring, right, in your life. And so in one of my downloads that you can get on my website, I have 100 things that cause grief and 25 seemingly benign things that cause grief, loss, and trauma. And for an autistic person, small things like moving across town can cause grief, loss, and trauma, right? Yes. For an autistic child. So any event in your life that uproots you or changes drastically can cause grief. Depending on the level of how it affects you and how you are affected by grief, determines what kind of recovery you're going to go through. You probably have, denial if it's something horrible, or you'll have bargaining, right? You'll go through those initial 6 Kubler-Ross, very overused parts of going through grief. But everyone that gets something, a diagnosis that's different than what yesterday was, it changed your tomorrow, you're going to have grief or loss. You're going to feel it. Yeah. And it's very normal, and your child's going to feel it. And a lot of parents feel grief because they feel like they failed their child somehow. It's like, oh, what have we done? It's like, you've done nothing. They're going to go through that. And for a teen, a young child, an autistic young woman that's just found out she's autistic, you're starting to piece things together. When I say I was elated, I also cried for the first hour with the 2 doctors that diagnosed me. And they were like very compassionate about it. They go, this is so normal. I said, to cry? They go, yes, this is very normal. Yeah. And so I was happy and crying at the same time and grieving my past. And, I don't think I was done with my conversation with them before I was planning my future as a newly diagnosed autistic person. But yeah, I went through grief. Yeah, it was sad.
And I have to say, sometimes parents we get squeamy about talking about that grief phase, because once you get through that phase and you're in the phase where you're helping to support your child, I don't want to put too much on it, but I think some of us feel like we don't want to be misunderstood about the grief, because we're not grieving our child. We're grieving sometimes that a misconception of that we wanted our child to have things easier, that no parent ever wakes up and goes, oh, I hope that my child will get a diagnosis of something that has led to bullying and stigmatization and all of those things. It doesn't mean we agree with that. It just means that we are going through the realities of, okay, my child has more challenges than I wanted them to have. Later, we can dig in and we all need to be working on the bullying and the stigmatization and eradicating that, because it doesn't have to be a part of the diagnosis. Our society makes it a part of the diagnosis.
Exactly.
But I think that parents sometimes feel like we're traitors to our children if we admit that the diagnosis was something that caused a period of grief. I wish we could let go of that.
Could have very well been why my mother didn't have me diagnosed, and probably half of my other siblings. Maybe she thought that was a stigma. I mean, let's face it, I was born in 1962. I am 62 and a half years old, right? Going on 63. If I would have been diagnosed as a very young child, I could have been institutionalized. I don't know. My mother wasn't Temple Grandin's mother.
Right.
Right. So I don't know what would have become of me if I'd had that diagnosis. I would have probably been misdiagnosed for whatever reason. I would have been schizophrenic or bipolar or dual personality, none of which apply to me. Right. But so in a way, because it came later, the diagnosis was correct. I could have been misdiagnosed. That just means that we have a lot of work to do in the autism community.
That's right.
And you're right. You should be able to walk into a classroom and our other students should be trained on what people that are different than them look like. I'm not broken. Exactly. I'm different than you. And you should be used to seeing different by now, right? And that is on our fault for not helping our children to understand that there are neurodiverse people out there. Their brain is wired a little different than yours. It doesn't make them broken.
That's right.
It makes them different. And getting used to different is a training. I think you were talking about the LE, the environment of learning, right? And whether they should be mainstreamed or not mainstream. It's like if a child's in a classroom, that's the only autistic child, and there's 10 other children, 20 other children that are not autistic, shouldn't we be working on the other 20 children to make sure they understand what autism looks like?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a mountaintop we all need to get to. Unbelievably, we're out of time, and yet I've so enjoyed this, and what an inspiration you are. What a viewpoint you have on so many different aspects of this. I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to be here. I want to remind everybody that your book is called Gold Scars, that you are someone, if a family is dealing with grief or trauma, you are someone who can help them. We want to encourage everyone to go to Sylvia Moore, that's Moore Myers, MYRES.com. That is the place where you're going to be able to find the book, that you're going to be able to contact her and hear more from her. Sylvia, I can't say enough how sorry I am for the things that you have gone through, but I appreciate the warrior that you are, the survivor that you are, the teacher that you are, and that you are making it easier for so many other people to deal with their trauma, their grief, their loss, and to understand the importance of whatever you might be feeling. If you suspect that your child may be on the spectrum, getting that, or you've heard from Sylvia, make all the difference. Don't be afraid of going and getting the diagnosis. She can help you to deal with the feelings about it, but go get the diagnosis. Help your child.
we have feelings for a reason. It's what
Yeah.
makes us alive. We have all a variety of them, and it's okay. I think most people think that they're not supposed to grieve. We have to grieve.
Yeah.
We have to go through that process, and it's normal.
And I just have to say, as I'm looking at the two of us here on the screen, I turned 62 in 2 weeks, Sylvia, and like you were just putting me to shame. Like you do not look like you are in your 60s, madam.
I've never looked my age. I look like a 2-year-old when I was in first grade. I just slow grower. I don't get it.
Well, and when I was,
I'm 63 inside. I promise.
Well, when I was 8, I could pass for a 20-year-old. So there we go.
I think you're lovely.
Well, I think you're lovely also. Sylvia, it's been lovely chatting with you, and thank you so much for all that you're doing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on the show.
All right, you take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
You guys, I just have we're over time here, but I just want to say that on Monday, we're having that special education attorney who's also a self-advocate. Michael's going to be with us, and we're going to talk about things with him that are important to all of us. On Tuesday, Dr. Grampiche is back for Ask Dr. Doreen. And then on Wednesday, our very special guest is Andy Bondi. We have been trying to make it possible for Andy Bondi to be on the show for more years than I can shake a stick at, and something always happens. So say a prayer. I'm hopeful that this time we're actually going to get to have Andy on. He and his wife were the masterminds behind, they created PECS, the Picture Exchange Communication System, and we're going to talk with him about what the intent for PECS was, how he continues to fight for the right for all individuals to have a way to communicate. So that and ever so much more going on next week, plus which we will have news for you, but be looking at our social media, because I think it is tomorrow that we are launching the ticket sales for that All Ghouls Gala. Would love your help and support with that, either promoting it or coming to it. I also want to say hi to Rodney. And the reason why we want your help with the All Ghouls Gala is, remember that the money that is raised at that event goes to grants for families like yours and other families for things like safety equipment, iPads, copays, all kinds of things. We can't get there without raising the money. So please help us to raise as much money as possible in whatever way that you can. I appreciate you. We are going to be back on Monday with a great week of shows. Don't want to miss that. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.